Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today I'm going to give you 10 reasons to homeschool high school. One common theme that I see running through many families in the homeschooling community is the idea of homeschooling your children up through middle school. But once they hit those high school years, of sending them off to a traditional school, whether it be public or private. And while that is each family's personal decision on how they're going to approach their teenagers' education, I wanted to talk to you about 10 reasons why you might want to consider continuing to homeschool throughout those years. Or if your kids are in school now and are entering those high school years, possibly reasons where you might want to pull them out to be home with you and for them to continue finishing their education. So first of all, one reason to homeschool high school is because your teenagers will have opportunities to learn life skills that are not taught in school. How many times have you heard people say that the things that they learned in high school had no bearing on their lives? Sure, you might know what a sine and a cosine is, but when it comes time to file your taxes, a lot of people have no idea how to even file the most basic tax form. It's not something that's taught in school. There are a lot of kids who are even coming out of college who wouldn't know how to open up their own bank account or to buy their own car, or, unfortunately, a lot of them can't even do the most basic things like cooking and laundry, just because they have never been trained in those most basic aspects of everyday life. So yeah, homeschooling your teenager gives you the opportunity to let your teen shadow you. Let them see what real life is all about. What happens in a household? How do you do certain things that they are going to need to know in their adult lives? Remember that 80% of what a teenager learns in high school is not ever going to have any sort of effect on their future. So the second reason to consider homeschooling high school is because it is so much easier for your teen to hold a part-time job or an apprenticeship. There are a lot of high schoolers who are in school who have part-time jobs, but just imagine the stress of that, of being in school for 8 hours, possibly going to after-school activities, completing homework, and then on top of that, also dealing with a job. Kids who are home, they don't take as long with their schoolwork, first of all. Second of all, they can learn to weigh the pros and cons of the things that they are choosing to spend their time on. When my oldest daughter was in her senior year of high school, even though she was working part-time, she put in pretty many hours. For a part-timer, they were a lot of hours. And I remember I used to get so stressed out because she was not doing the amount of schoolwork that I had expected her to be doing her senior year. Now, mind you, she already had most of her credits completely completed. The only thing that she really needed to finish up was English, because she needed 4 credits of that, but she had all of her other credits done. But I still had this notion in my head of all the academic things that she should be doing her senior year. And when I saw that she was not getting all these things done because of her job, at first I panicked, until I saw what sort of effect her job was having on her. These were real life skills she was learning. She was interacting with people. She was learning customer service. She was learning how to hold her own up against different types of personalities. She was learning how to do different things in the workforce. She was learning how to listen to her superiors. She was learning how to be responsible with waking up early and calling off if she was sick. These are all things that had a far greater impact than any section 1.8 questions 1 to 10 in her history book would have had on her life at all. So a third reason that you might want to consider homeschooling high school is because when you are homeschooling, the curriculum can truly be tailored to your teenager's interests. And I know schools do allow you to choose electives, But first of all, the electives that they offer might not be something that your teenager is interested in to begin with. And not only that, the rest of their day is still filled up with things that your teenagers might likely have absolutely no interest in at all, but they have to get them done because the bureaucracy says that they have to. I'm going to go back to my oldest daughter again, because when she was in high school, she was so into Sherlock. She loved the Sherlock series, and she also was really into psychology. By that point, she had been learning 2 years of psychology in homeschool. Now, when I was in high school, yeah, I took psychology too, but it was only offered to me for half a year. My daughter, on the other hand, was able to take it for 2 years in our homeschool, and I took her interest in Sherlock, and I actually wrote a Sherlock curriculum for her, which included things like psychology and logic and how to read body movements. I think it was called kinesics. For literature, she was reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So I was able to take those things that I knew she was going to pay attention to and completely shape her entire curriculum around them. And that's not something that can happen in a traditional school setting. So the fourth reason why you should consider homeschooling high school is because you can focus on the values that are important to your family. Let's face it, indoctrination is rampant in the school system today. And while some schools are better than others, I've noticed that there are a lot of high schools that seem like they're almost working at a fever pitch to get the ideas that they want in the students' heads drilled into them as much as they possibly can. And unfortunately, very often those values are completely contrary to what a lot of students' parents want them to believe in. Keep your kids home with you so that you can instill in them the values that you know are true to your faith and that are true to you as human beings. Now, the fifth idea, or the fifth reason why you might want to consider homeschooling high school is because, and this is actually related to the last one that I was talking about, I see more and more and more that parental rights are being disregarded when it comes to public education. And a lot of times this is happening in those high schools, whether it would be giving students birth control without parental knowledge, whether it would be vaccinating students without parental knowledge, or it could also be giving kids access to certain resources or certain places like Planned Parenthood that you might not necessarily agree with. These schools are overstepping your boundary, and they are saying, we don't care what it is that the parents want for their children. We are going to do what we think is best for these children. So I think it's really important that if you feel strongly about these things, you can't just assume that your school is okay and that your school isn't going to do these things. Because what I see happening is that these practices are being spread more and more and more. And before you know it, those schools are going to be in the majority. The sixth reason that you would want to consider homeschooling high school is because of peer pressure. Yeah, we always hear about socialization, but what about the Proverbs verse that says, bad company corrupts good morals? This is so true. And I think that, yeah, there are a lot of good kids in school, but there are also a lot of bad eggs. When your kids are going to high school, they're going to be surrounded by people that you have no idea what sorts of values they were raised with. You're going to have no idea what sorts of friends your kids have. And unfortunately, what is happening in the world today is a lot of kids are being raised with moral values completely different to those of what, for example, a Christian family like we are, a Christian family would believe in. You have got to protect your children. Yes, they are going to, at one point in time, they are going to need to step out into the world and they're going to be faced with this. But people always use school as an example. Just because you're homeschooling your kids doesn't mean that they're never going to be coming up against people like that. Your kids are not going to be confined to their houses if you're homeschooling them. They're still going to be out in the community. They're going to be possibly at a part-time job. They're going to have friends. They're probably going to be playing sports or maybe taking some sort of classes. The difference is that when kids are in school for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you as the parent are not there to take your child under your wing and to guide them through situations like that. So the seventh reason that you should consider homeschooling high school is because your teen can focus on education and not testing. That actually is the reason that my oldest daughter asked if she could be homeschooled for high school. I don't know, most of you probably did not see my story of burnout and how I homeschooled for 2 years and then I ended up burning out. I sent my kids back to school for 2 years and then I pulled them back out again and kept them out. Most of you probably have not seen that, so I'll link that in the description box. But when I did pull my kids back out of school, my oldest daughter did stay in public school at that point, because she was in all honors classes, she was doing well, and she genuinely liked school. So I wanted to give her the option at that time. My views have changed since then, but at that time, I gave her the option of staying in school, which she did want to do. But despite the fact that she enjoyed school and did well, she, at the end of 8th grade, asked me if I could please pull her out again and start homeschooling her for high school. And her reason was the standardized tests. Even though she got excellent grades, even though she was doing very well all the time, had a lot of friends, the standardized tests completely petrified her, and she realized that they were taking away true learning in all of this test prep that they were doing, and she didn't want that for her high school years. And you shouldn't want that for your teenagers' high school years either. Their high school years should be about learning to prepare for adulthood, learning to prepare for life, not learning to prepare for tests. So the 8th reason that you should consider homeschooling high school is because it will give your teen more time to pursue their own interests. You know, I said this before, kids who are in school, they're there for 8 hours, and then a lot of times they go to after school programs, or they have part-time jobs, or they play sports, and then they come home and they have all sorts of homework. And then at the same time, you've got guidance counselors pulling them into the office, trying to steer them into what path they should take, for a possible college or a possible future career for them. How is a student who has absolutely no time on their own ever supposed to figure out what those interests are? I think that that's something that we push on kids too early, to be quite honest with you. How many kids have gone into college for one thing, started with one major, and then ended up switching majors because they found out that it wasn't something that they really wanted? And I think of 2 reasons that actually happens is because, first of all, kids are expected to make those decisions too early. And second of all, they're not given time to actually find themselves and figure those things out for themselves. Homeschooling does give kids the opportunity to follow their own interests. They have pretty much all the time in the world. And you know what? Another thing is that homeschooling is really great for teenagers who have entrepreneurial spirits. How many kids out there would be perfect for starting their own business or for creating their own product? But they're being held back because they've got to get up, they've got to go to school all day, they've got to complete, all of their work, and they just don't have time to do the things that they want to do. It is the stories that you hear about homeschooled kids who were given the time to actually begin their own business, to start their own entrepreneurship. Those stories are so amazing. You should actually look into them. I'm going to try to find some to link them in the description box. But yeah, if you've got a child with an entrepreneurial spirit, homeschooling would be perfect for them. Now, the 9th reason that you might want to consider homeschooling high school is because your family can remain central to their lives. It's like a theme in the teenage years that they no longer want anything to do with their parents. They no longer want anything to do with their siblings. And everything is about their friends, constantly wanting to be with their friends all the time. When you have your kids home with you, now, I'm not going to say that it always happens that your kids are going to choose their family over their friends, but your children do have a better chance of seeing how important that family structure is, seeing how important that family bond is, and to remember that blood is always thicker than water. And the 10th reason that you might want to consider homeschooling is because, you know what? Your teenager might actually get a healthy amount of sleep. How many studies have we seen saying that teenagers need a lot more sleep than what they're actually getting? There are so many high schools nowadays that start at like 7:15 in the morning. And again, add on all those other activities. These teenagers aren't having time to go to bed early enough to get an adequate amount of sleep. Most of them are probably not going to bed until after midnight, and then they're having to get up sometimes at 5:30 or 6 o'clock to get ready for school. And then they're supposed to be functioning normally while they are at school to take their tests, do their work, pay attention to the lectures. You know, something's got to give. Homeschooled kids have the benefits of starting school when their body is ready for it. I've had high schoolers who have started school at 10 o'clock in the morning. I've had high schoolers who have chosen to do their schoolwork after lunch. And I've had some of my teenagers who have decided that they're going to start their work maybe in the evening time. And any time that they start their work is okay with me as long as they are getting their work done. And I know you're always going to have someone who chimes in and says, but kids need to learn to wake up early. How are they going to learn to wake up early if you don't make them get up early for school? Well, see, here's the thing. First of all, there's this really great invention called an alarm clock. And I'm being facetious, but in a way that I'm not. Because those alarm clocks, they work wonders. That's exactly what my daughter did. She had always been a night owl. She was one of them who was usually doing her schoolwork at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But then when she got her part-time job, there were times that she had to be at work at 6:30 in the morning. And no, mom didn't have to go and wake her up and keep after her to get her up. She set her alarm on her phone and she woke up because she wanted to work. She knew that this job was her responsibility. She knew that it was something that she chose to do herself. And I think that a lot of people, they just get so concerned with simple things like that, like with setting alarm clocks. Now, and I also think that it's important to also point out that not all jobs are first shift. I think people forget about that. They've got getting up early ground into their brains so much because of this notion of school and when it's supposed to happen that they forget that there is such a thing as second shift jobs. There is such a thing as third shift jobs. So no, the world does not revolve around early hours for everyone. You know, there are 24 hours in a day and a job can start during any one of those hours. So anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram because YouTube disabled my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.